Kay Daigle of Beyond Ordinary Women Ministries, and I'd like to welcome you to our session today with Carrie Steinbach. Carrie is the Director of Women's Ministry at Park Cities Presbyterian Church in Dallas. And several months ago, I heard Carrie speak to a group of leaders in ministry about loneliness, and I felt like it would be such an encouragement and help to so many of you out there, because leadership can be lonely and life can be lonely. And so we're going to talk about dealing with loneliness in ministry, and this first video is about identifying it. So Carrie, let me start with a question, a little more personal question. What led you to study loneliness in depth in the first place? I mean, what gave you a heart for this, I guess?
Well, what was a very clear direction is I was asked and thought it was time to take a sabbatical from my job at the church. And the personnel committee asked us to have a theme and that what we're going to study. And as I thought about it, I thought this is very much a part of how I lead in my life, and I see it in others. And so I chose the topic loneliness and leadership.
And so how long was your sabbatical? Were you studying it the whole time?
Yeah, it was 3 months, and I definitely did some fun things, and enjoyed the time of rest. And really the purpose in our church is to just have time with the Lord. But also I did read about it and I did study about it. And then God, as He always does, give me some experience with it myself during that time.
So great. So as we move into this first topic about identifying it, we certainly are in a culture that loneliness seems to be on the rise, or at least isolation, which loneliness goes along with. So what have you learned about that?
Well, first of all, I was surprised to learn that a couple of years ago, Cigna health insurance company, decided that in their research it's at an epidemic state, and that loneliness, it's a little bit subjective, but it's defined as if not so many the quantity of the friends you have, but the depth of the relationships within your friendships. And if it's not enough to you personally, then you feel lonely. So you can see how that's different with other people. But what has exasperated it is social media. And it's kind of ironic, because it seems like that the more quote-unquote friends we have in our social media, the more lonely we are. So I think there's two things that are making it a really desperate case. Is that, first of all, it's this infatuation we have with social media, and the other reason is busyness, and that we're such a busy, hurried culture that we don't take time for deep relationships in which we really listen to each other and really know each other. So it's almost like we are in social media, we'd rather have 5,000 likes and followers than 5 intimate friends.
Right. What does it mean to be lonely?
That's a great question. I think it means to feel isolated, to feel like you don't have anyone to reach out to. No one's thinking about you, that you're by yourself, and even if you made the effort, who would really care? And that you're, bottom line, that you're not known and understood by anyone.
And I believe you've identified some various types of loneliness or various causes. How would you explain that?
Right. There's a story of a pastor, John Ortberg, who went to visit the now deceased Dallas Willard for advice, and how can I be successful in ministry? And he said, Dallas Willard leaned forward and said, ruthlessly eliminate hurry. And John Ortberg said, okay, what next? And he goes, that's it. Do not hurry. And that's so hard for us to have that, and especially in our efficiency culture, and get it done. And really we deal with loneliness by trying to be busier, the busier we are. But if we are not present to people, they don't feel loved. Because being present to people is the first step to building that emotional connection of feeling loved. And if we don't give that to those that we minister to, of being present to them, then we've lost the whole thing. So that's why it's so important. And bottom line too, that if we're not learning to be present to the Lord, how in the world can we stay connected to each other? So I think that's so huge.
Right, and if you're not taking the time to be present to other people, how do you avoid your own loneliness? Because you're not not only are you not investing in them, but you're not giving them time to invest in you.
Right, right. So true. And I think Diane Langberg is a counselor that is so wise. I followed her for years, and she made a statement I've never forgotten. I read it in seminary. She said, if you don't deal with your own loneliness, that you will inadvertently, I don't think you realize it, but you will start, instead of feeding the sheep God gives you, you'll start feeding on the sheep. And that you try to get your own needs met by them. And I don't think you even realize you're doing it. But that's also a way that Satan really works in our blind spots to destroy ministry, I think.
Wow, that's really insightful, isn't it? And a little scary.
Yeah.
Definitely a little scary. So, Carrie, what types of loneliness do you see as women do ministry? What types of loneliness might they encounter?
Well, I think one is obvious, is that we are lonely just because we're the leader. And that means that we're often, one of my friends, Cheryl Fletcher, who is a director of women's ministries in California, said, we're always setting the table. And what she means by that is we're getting everything set up so that other people can participate in the ministry things we have. For instance, I have helped lead a women's silent retreat at our church for years. Well, I'm the one that doesn't get to be silent because of that. And so, that's a lonely spot. You're not getting to, you're setting the table so that others can participate in that ministry. And then a second thing is, this happens with everybody, is just that feeling of being left out. You might be on a team with all men and you're the only woman. Or you could even be 3 women on a team and, there's that crazy thing of 3 women and one feels left out. So that's the second reason. I think we also can be lonely because as the leader, you are carrying the vision. And it might not be time to tell everybody about it. You might have ideas that are not gelled yet, but you're carrying the big purpose and no one else is. And I think that's a big part. And then fourth, perhaps you have experienced betrayal. Maybe you've had to leave a ministry post because of that. Maybe it's a failure on your part, on another's part. But because of that, it's big grief. It's a big loneliness to be through and go through that part. Yeah. And then last is just flat out, because we carry our own griefs, our sorrows throughout life, and you have to carry that while you minister to others. And that's a big part. My friend Nancy Guthrie, I went to visit her during my sabbatical, and she said her grief, which she lost 2 children years ago and now does ministry to people in grief, she said it just changes the way you look at the audience. And you look out and okay, Lord, unless you meet these people where they are in the depths of their grief and loneliness, your word has to do it, not me. And so it changes the way that she thinks about ministry, which that's what grief does. So I think those 5 reasons women in leadership experience loneliness. And I left out being lonely as a missionary or cross-cultural ministry, but I think those are the big reasons that we experience loneliness.
Absolutely, and I identify with pretty much all of those at one point or the other.
Me too,
It's just sort of what you carry. And it can be true of women who aren't actually on staff in a church. If you're in a leadership position of any kind as a volunteer somewhere in your neighborhood, those types of loneliness can be as true there as they are in a church situation.
Exactly, yes.
Well, thank you, Carrie. Thank you for sharing that. And Carrie and I will be talking on 2 additional sessions about loneliness, so we hope that you will join us as we discuss loneliness further, as we talk about how to deal with the loneliness that she has just described.